This is the weekly wrap up presented by the Conversation Project. I'm Jay Cleveland Payne, and we're about to give you the wrap up news stories from the past week that we produced for you. Let's go on to our feeds on Facebook and Twitter, and we talk about at least most of them, produce most of them for our daily cast we call Things You Might Have Heard, and we are giving to you now in a more pure form. This is the total week's top stories of the week. Now, throughout the week, we take a bunch of stories from the day or the weekend, and we give you a small amount because of time restraints and give you ones that are the most impacting to you. This one is essentially the pure form of all the top stories of the week. The top 10 stories from 1 to 10 based on their actual involvement, based on your actual engagement, and we'll give you that sort of context as we go. We'll also give you some stories for more context to give you what didn't make it in. We call those almost rants, and those stories from 11 to 15, we'll present those as well. And to give some really deep love to a story that didn't get a lot of love, but in most cases, probably should have gotten more attention and more context to how we do things for the Conversation Project Daily. We have what's called the Almost Irrelevant Story of the Week. That story, almost irrelevant because it's at the very bottom of the list and usually gets very little response, but it's usually a story that probably should have got more response, but based on the way things get posted, got missed. This week, that story is at number 214. 214 distinct different news stories posted throughout this week, and you told us what to talk about every single weekday, and now for the top 10 stories. I want to remind you that our main website is at thisisaconversationproject.com, and that gives you all of the news, all of the information, all the hows and whys of what we do this stuff, to go deeper into what we'll present for you today and all week long, and why we do it, to have greater conversations, as we say, with more people around the world. You can email us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com and email us about pretty much anything, including your responses to things here, what we do here in this podcast, this video cast, and the other things we do. And I want to remind you that there's another podcast coming after this one. It's called The Story of the Week. This is about an editorializing of one of the top stories this week that you chose. So you give me a chance to go deeper into another story. We'll get into what that story is, give you a little bit of a taste of what that's going to happen in a bit. So for right now, let's get ready to get into the news for the week. The top 10 stories, going from 10 to 1 to give a little mystery here, counting them down, so we can see what stories you guys said around the world got to by engaging what's going on. We'll go deeper into the engagement part in a bit, but the basic thing is follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and follow, or X, if you will. Follow us on those feeds, and as we post the stories, you just engage in them, and the higher the engagement score, the better chance we get to talk about it. At number 10, Natalie Portman and husband Benjamin Millipede, I always say that wrong, hit by claims they have separated after 11 years of marriage. I'm butchering the guy's name, mostly because I don't know who he is, but Natalie Portman, a actress I've been following literally since childhood, is getting divorced from her husband, Benjamin Millipede, of about 11 years. They share a son, a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old, but they've separated, probably getting divorced because this is the summer of divorce. That's going to come up a bit later, so hang on to that tight a little bit. She believes that there was an affair with her husband and some other person, so that's a good reason not to be together, if you think. They actually collaborated back in 2018 for a actual project, so they've worked together and they've done things together. So they've done the whole total package of the Hollywood actor producer sort of bent, but in what's becoming just a trend this summer of big time Hollywood breakups. Here's another one where there's a separation. Looks like it's leading towards a divorce for Natalie Portman and her husband, Benjamin Millipede. I'm not quite sure how it's said, but they're not staying together, apparently. At number 9 this week, this was probably the biggest fight of the weekend, even though we'll talk about the other big fight for the weekend in a bit. White Sox Tim Anderson, Guardians Jose Ramirez ejected after pitches clearing fight. This was posted for you guys to see on Sunday, as it happened sometime on Saturday. White Sox shortstop Tim Anderson and Guardians third baseman Jose Ramirez got into a bit of a dukes up action, a big time boxing match, which really, rivaled any boxing match or any MMA fight you've seen on TV in quite some time. Benches cleared, the whole thing happened. Progressive Field was a whole mess of players out there. People were ejected. Essentially, Anderson and Ramirez got suspended for a couple days. I think they're both back playing since it's been about a week since this happened. I think they're both back on the teams, back on the rosters. But a suspension and a bit of loss of money for both those guys, plus other guys on the field. It was basically a random, well, not random, it's just kind of a traditional Donnybrook of baseball happening there. The good news is baseball seems to be having a comeback as people are paying attention, even if it takes a fight to sort of interject some extra love into former America's game. I think now it's pretty much football. We talked a lot about the number 8 story, a lot of places, a lot of ways, and it's deeper than just what we posted here. Now, the headline we're posting, which you hear that we're referencing to, is the number 8 story. As Beyoncé in D.C., FedEx Field issues shelter-in-place order due to severe weather. This story got bigger and bolder and more awesome for Miss Beyoncé. What happened? Severe weather happened in D.C. last weekend. The first day of it happened on Saturday night as Beyoncé was performing a concert. Or Sunday night, as Beyoncé was performing a concert at the at FedEx Field inside a big football stadium. So when those things happen, just like in football games, they got to go in the concourse. They got to go figure out where to stay and wait. They can't stay on the field because of lightning, because Beyoncé can't get struck by lightning, and other people probably not as well. So what happened? They had to delay the show for about an hour or so because of weather delays and some rain and some lightning. Because of that, the show went very, very much over, which means the subways that pull people out of that stadium area should have closed about an hour earlier. Beyonce's team paid for the subway workers, the whole subway, to stay open until everybody got home. About $100,000 extra cheddar on top of the night. Now, Beyonce is one of the big concerts this season that's actually making money. And maybe, even though Taylor's going to make about $1 billion on her concerts, Beyonce not quite there by the money-wise, but pretty darn close. And it's a good thing that she did this because, you know, she just needs more extra attention. There can't be enough happy stories about Beyonce. You may not like her music so much. You may think it's overproduced and a little bit woke, if you will, since we're using that word. But, you know, the lady puts on a show and the lady takes care of people. And that's a case of her taking care of little people in the stands who are trying not to get hit by lightning. Probably a good thing. Our number 7 story was one we tried to avoid, although I really, really want to talk about it. The headline reads, Costa Rica soccer player who jumped from bridge is eaten by crocodile in front of horrified onlookers. Yes, you can see why I wanted to avoid getting that out there, but you can also see why I kind of wanted to talk about it. A soccer player jumped into the water off a bridge and then was seen essentially being attacked, then literally eaten and killed by a crocodile. In fact, there are pictures on social media what appears to be the crocodile with his body just in his mouth floating around. Police obviously shot and killed the actual beast to obtain the body. Funeral was held a few days later for the player, and about 1,000 people showed up for the memorial service. Yeah, it was just kind of a sad thing to see. There have been plenty of crocodile attacks lately in the area, including this one right here. Something you don't want to mess around with are alligators and crocodiles in the wild, in the water. Now, they are more or less peaceful and don't want to be messed with in most cases and just don't want to be bothered. But when you bother them, oh, trust me, and you look like food, they will attack. At number 6 this week, that story headline reads, New York City officials announce hate crime charge and stabbing death of gay dancer O'Shea Sibley. The 28-year-old professional choreographer was stabbed to death after a confrontation between a group of friends and another group of young men, and a 17-year-old is now the suspect that's in custody for this. Sibley and a group of friends were dancing at a Brooklyn gas station just outside when another group approached them and basically, started calling them, homo words and black slur words. You know the words. You've heard them plenty of times. You may have said a few of them. That's what was happening. A little back and forth went going forward to it, and then it turned into a fight, ending up with Sibley being stabbed to death. As we say, a 17-year-old is now in custody for that case. We'll see how this one plays out going forward. The number 5 story this week has this headline, several people detained after fight breaks out at Montgomery's Riverfront Park in Alabama. This story escalated fairly quickly, as you might have known, and turned into kind of the story of the week with more and more chapters being built. What happened last weekend? The full story, we're going to kind of skip past what this headline was when the initial thing came out, but the full story basically comes out to this. Alabama's Montgomery, the city of Montgomery has a riverfront park and a boat that goes out onto the river and comes back and just for tourism stuff. All you big cities have those things. They have little cruises, they have music, you can eat on the boat, things like that. As the riverboat was returning to dock at the port, there was a pontoon boat that was just there. They were just docked there because it was open, even though it's reserved for the city's boat. One of the captains got off the boat, went back to shore, went to talk to the folks, said, "Hey guys, we need to park our boat. Can you please move your boat?" It turned into a confrontation. Another person came off the ship and tried to forcibly eject the pontoon boat, which we don't see on camera. Because of that, it turned into a big scuffle. The people on the pontoon boat, who were essentially older white people, started attacking the black captain who was trying to do the talking. It turned into what looked like a black and white fight as many people jumped into it, folks off the pontoon boat and many folks who just happened to be of color joined in the confrontation, including one of the workers on the boat who jumped in the water to swim to the dock to fight, and some guy who pulled a chair and did like Ric Flair all over the place. All the memes are out there. All the jokes are out there. It's a big thing on Twitter, and Black Twitter needed a little bit of reviving after being called Black X, which really doesn't work out as well as Black Twitter. Well, it should. But it became the talk of the town for the week and all sorts of stories. 5 people, I believe, so far have been arrested for this. One person actually was released off their charges. And it's just been a big kerfuffle that did not need to happen, although the memes are hilarious. Let's move on to story at number 4. That headline reads like this: Lil Tay, teen internet rapper, has died. Another story that we saw a lot of reaction to, a lot of engagement with, a story that we posted into the feeds because we post something every 50 minutes, so we have to fill the feeds with things. Something that popped up in social media that was interesting, but I didn't think was going to take very much of a hold because our demographic is basically 45-year-old dudes. A young teenage girl, Claire Hope, internet teen sensation out of Canada known as Lil Tay, has died. Family announced the news of Lil Tay's Instagram page and asked for privacy for grieving with the loss. The 9-year-old influencer essentially doing all sorts of things on the internet, and people seem to love her. Like I said, our demo is a bit older, and I don't think many folks in our demo actually get this, but we put it on our feeds. It got the reaction. Maybe the reaction from the general internet was what helped us out one. So this is out there. Check out the full story because it's a very touching story on our website, wherever you get this video or audio from. And check out the link for the story to go deeper into this at the number 4 story on Lil Tay. Another story that's extremely tragic and not much detail to it yet, although we're going to find more as they unfortunately dig into this situation. The number 3 story headline reads: Missing Mexican woman Maria Fernando Sanchez found in Germany. The police in Germany found the body of Maria Fernando Sanchez. She's a 24-year-old Mexican woman who disappeared in Berlin at the end of July. Mexican Foreign Ministry said that Lopez Obrador would ask the German prosecutors to bolster the search for Sanchez, that is the president of Mexico, asking for a bit more help on this one. Not much known except the body was found, and I believe it was in a canal, and they're working on it at this point right now. At number 2 this week, we told you this is the summer of Hollywood breakups. Sophia Bush refuses to pay spousal support in bitter divorce. Sophia Bush is divorcing her husband, and he's asking for spousal support. That means Mr. Grant Hughes. She's saying no. What she's saying is they have a prenup, she has her own money, and she's not paying him expletive. You can fill your own expletive as you want to. And that's basically going forward. This is becoming a very, 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 very bad breakup. And it's amazing. The problem was they basically just got married, and now they're really getting divorced, and it's really, really happening. And there's no children, no child support. So why is he asking for spousal support? Because her spouse has money and should support him, right? We're going to see how this turns out as this actually becomes a spousal support issue, even though it is a Hollywood famous people with money issue. But it's a spousal support issue because there are various members in people with no money where a woman is more successful than a man, and they ask for spousal support in many cases because they are, they don't have children as well. And when you flip it on its head, when a man has more money than a woman and they ask for spousal support despite prenups and things like that, in many cases, the woman usually wins. In the other case around, the man usually loses, except in cases for big time money like this, where a lifestyle or a brand has been built or some sort of partnership has been made, so there's a business connection to the two. Sophia Bush says that her husband, Grant Hughes, has no connection whatsoever. She ain't paying expletive. We're saying expletive because we're new to some things doing here and trying to keep off those those X-rated, E-rated things coming down. So we're going to do our best to keep with that. Now, the number one story for this week, we always give it some fanfare, some love, because it earned the rights to talk about. This is one we talked about very big when it came out. This is a weekend story that rolled into a Monday version of things you might have heard. And so it was just a culmination of another trend happening with famous people this summer and a culmination of a very, very big event that happened. And so the story here was the top Twitter story for the week. By the way, the missing woman in Mexico story was the top Facebook story of the week. The top response on Twitter for this one, which rules the rules here, it was more responsive than the last story on Sophia Bush by 71%. It was more responsive than the story we're going to get to much, much later, the 214th story, the almost relevant story of the week, by 670,900%. The story got 20%, 19.6% of all engagement all week. Of all the stories you had all week, of all 214 stories you posted, 20% of all the people engaged in this one here. And what is this one here, you may ask? Well, I will tell you right now. That story headline reads like this. Cardi B's alleged microphone from viral video could raise $100,000 for charity. $100,000 for charity. Let me say that one more time. $100,000 for charity on a microphone she threw at some drunk in a thing. Now, this story had some layers. Number one, people are throwing things at people on stage this summer because whatever. Number two, this woman didn't throw something physical, not like a phone or whatever. She threw a drink, which is kind of the standard thing you throw, but still not on Cardi B while she's on stage in Vegas. Number three, Cardi B don't play and threw the microphone she was singing with at the woman. Number four, woman sued, or woman tried to sue. She pressed charges. Number three, police was like, no, not doing it. And now we come to here. The company that ran the event took the electronic equipment from the event and took the microphone and is auctioning it off. And they think $100,000 could come to it to some charity. Now, most of this is because they want to get some exposure. Yes, but somebody's going to get a big chunk of change out of this whole ordeal, which should not have happened for a whole lot of reasons, but because for a whole lot of reasons, it sort of happened. Now, those are your top 10 stories for the week. Now we're going to talk to a quick transition to talk about the Story of the Week podcast, because we're going to take one of these stories from the top 10 and expound on it, or at least I will expound on it. My voice will be there. People help me write it, but my voice will be there to go deeper into the story, to get some more perspective, some commentary for that story. What stories were chosen this week to do said commentary? It is this one right here. The headline for the number one story this week in the mix is Sophia Bush refuses to pay spousal support in bitter divorce. It, of course, was number two story this week, and we're going to talk about this and throw in Natalie Portman as well, and many of the big-time celebrities who have broken up over the summer. And we think it's a bit more complicated than just the relationships are breaking down. There's a little something else going on that's affecting all of us, if you will. And we'll get to that. That's your tease for checking out that podcast. We produced that about an hour or so after we finished this one up. So when you see this come in your feed, look for the next one coming in an hour in a separate feed. Look for the story of the week in a separate podcast feed, or find it at our website. This is theconversationproject.com. You can also, we'll also do a little bit pop into the runner-up story, which was the Montgomery Riverfront Park story in Alabama. I have talked extensively about this in some of our TikToks and some conversations, and in many cases in the things you might have heard, because we've talked about it essentially every single day with some sort of hiccup in that. So we didn't want to go deeper into that one. I thought in the way we do this, we take this headlines, we mix them up out of the order they're in, and sort of eliminate them back to forth to see which one's a better story to talk about. Sophia Bush is a much more fun, much more deeper story, and took a bit more, research to kind of make the points go, as opposed to the Riverfront Park story in Montgomery, which essentially memes about black people throwing caps up and then people just showing up like it's the bat signal. Because that's basically what it's turned into. So the story of the week this week, Sophia Bush refuses to pay spousal support and how that's a bigger deal. And that's sort of affecting a lot of us. And you'll have to tune in to find out how that effect is spilling over to everyone else. We're going to step away for just a second from the news headlines. In a moment, we'll come back with the almost rans and just a little bit of those. We can't spend much time with them. These are stories that weren't quite top 10, literally because they're 11 through 15. Stories for just some context that we may have actually talked about a bit throughout the week, but weren't the bigger stories per the numbers. As you saw and heard, some of the stories that we had in the top 10 were stories that we avoided talking about specifically in the week, so you may not have heard about them, but you probably saw them while you're engaging with us. We'll also go into the story that no one seemed to care about, but you probably should care. 214, the number is the story for this week. It is the almost relevant story for this week. We'll be right back after a quick sort of chatty chat. We'll do a commercial and promote ourselves here on the weekly wrap up from the Conversation Project. This is the show with the stories for the week ending August the 12th, 2023. So we talked about sponsors, and the sponsor that we want to highlight today is Robinhood, who's not actually doing so great. Robinhood didn't have a great week in the media per se, as once again they sort of got skewered and they're not making their actual their points for their projections, things like that. However, they exist. They're one of our sponsors. I still love them because they are the simplest, easiest way to buy and trade stocks and crypto and all those things. Now, crypto, not a great investment right now, so that's not so much their problem, or it's their problem, not their fault. But it is a good time to get yourselves into the markets because the markets are recovering. We're not saying to bet the farm on anything at all right now, not take anything that Kramer says on CNBC, because Kramer is actually wrong about 80% of the time on his TV picks. Maybe his fund does well, but when his things on TV, he's trying to get eyeballs and viewers, and those things are usually wrong. They don't stay very good very long. You want to get your own research, do your own research, buy things that maybe you are into because they may make more sense, and follow the markets. Actually read the statements, see what's happening going forward, see how things go, and play it by ear. You also want to actually probably consult an actual person who actually does this for a living for the big time money you're putting away. You probably have someone at work that does IRAs or does your 401ks or things like that going forward. This is a small time investment for personal investment, for expanding your portfolio and for learning how the markets work. Check out Robinhood at our affiliate link. This is theconversationproject.com/Robinhood. They're still going to give you a free stock. They're still going to give you plenty of options to trade stocks that are pretty powerful, and it's still going to give you a bit of research and some knowledge to learn stuff. I say learn some more stuff on your own. That'll help you out in a bit. And of course, be wise that these are investments. These are not savings. All investments have a chance of losing money. My investment portfolio is down for quite a bit. However, in this year, as things are progressing, many of the things that I have purchased lately have been on a smarter end and they are doing well. Some things that I've purchased a while back have not recovered and we're just sort of working it out. You never know until after you get that. Don't you just jump into it and say, hey, this is free money, because it's not, except for that free stock is free money. Make sure you know that investments can lose money, and do your research and refer to a professional if need be. Robinhood is who we work with, who I work with for my side stocks, my money guide that manages my main stuff. And we talk about other sponsors as well. But check out Robinhood for your chance to get into the stock market and do something with that spare change you have today. See us at thisisaconversationproject.com/Robinhood. This is an affiliate link. So if you choose the app and use the app, then we get something back that costs you nothing extra. And of course, they're still giving away free stocks at Robinhood. The Conversation Project lives at thisisaconversationproject.com. That is our online home. What we do 6 days a week is produce long form content, and 7 days a week we'll have shorts and things out there all the time. 5 days of those weeks, 5 days of that week, we have the things you might have heard, morning newscast. We're at 5:50 a.m. Central Time. I go on live and give you 10 stories on Monday, 8 stories for the rest of the week to get your day started with the most conversation stories that you have vetted. You go to our feeds on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook.com/This is a Conversation Project, and Twitter.com, or now we're gonna figure it out sooner than stay more, X.com/TH_conversation. And all you do is, as you're checking your feeds for other stuff, see what we have going on. and engage in the stories you see that's there. Like them, love them, hate them, share them, do whatever you can do with whatever platform's there. And the higher the engagement score, the better chance we have of talking about it in the next episode. So coming up on today, as Saturday, as we're recording this, we have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and a little bit of Monday to talk about Monday's show. We'll have 10 stories for you for things you might not have heard. This thing right here we're wrapping up is the weekly wrap-up. We'll take the engagement scores from the entire week, and we're giving you the top 10 stories of those week, plus some extra things there. So you can see in context what actual stories were the most impactful to you without me doing any judging and pruning them for the show particularly. The stories of the week we talked about already. Story of the week is a bit of editorial on one story. We told you what it's going to be for this week, and it's dealing with Sophia Bush and people getting divorced that are famous. And we have things coming out in short versions, TikToks, YouTubes, little things that are, some of them are just sort of trivial knowledge that are really cool. Some of them are deeper dives into some of the news stories that are out there, and especially some of them that we can't really go deep into when we're doing our weekly thing. Do you like what we're doing? Are you impressed by what we're doing? Let us know by going to your email machine and emailing us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Very simple, very clean, very easy. You can go to our feeds on Facebook and Twitter and help get us the news we need. Facebook.com/thisisconversationproject and Twitter.com or X.com th_conversation and engage in the stories. If you think what we're doing is good enough to keep doing it and want to help us actually go deeper, visit one of our sponsors, their affiliate links, so we get paid when you go to use them, or go to our partnerships page at thisisaconversationproject.com/partnerships. There are ways you connect with us directly to help us get things done, do more things, have more resources, have more time, get more news and better news out to people. If you are up for that, we thank you so much in advance for checking out. If you cannot go that route and you don't have the funds or the time, just follow us on the feeds and let us know what we're doing in comments. That is the best thing, always the best thing you can do. The partnership stuff is just gravy on top. Those who are partners and those who do donate, we thank you so much in advance for that. Those who are just watching and listening and sharing, we thank you right now for that. And we're back with more news from the Conversation Project. This is the weekly wrap-up for the week ending August 12, 2023. We just went through the top 10 stories of the week per your engagement. What stories weren't quite in that range? We'll go from 11 through 15 and give you those right now in the Almost Rans. The Almost Rans starting off first with number 11, WGA and AMPTP can't agree to resume negotiations. Strike to go on indefinitely. The Writers Association and the big time producers, those are the movie producers, not the Producers Guild. We'll talk about that in a second. Sort of got together to try to figure out when they're going to talk again, and then they couldn't figure out how to talk again, so they walked away. There's a pretty big letter out there from the members of the WGA on why they couldn't agree to just sit down. So for another full week or so, they kept striking. This happened over the weekend, so they striked the full week. Now, right now, currently, the Writers Guild is on strike. The Actors Guild is on strike. There have been some solidarity strikes in various places, in various regions in Los Angeles. There was a mass strike coordination across the nation where basically all but maybe one or two of the local chapters of the Actors Guild had some sort of demonstration that was public and very loud. And also the Producers Guild, not the motion picture producers, the people who fund the monies, but the people who show up and yell at the actors and the writers, they are showing solidarity. They're not striking. They don't have any contract negotiations up at the moment, I believe, but they showed some serious solidarity and walked with some of the writers and the actors at various parts of the massive show they had this week. This is going to be something that's going to play into the story of the week, by the way, so pay attention to that. But right now, it looks like there is nothing happening in the moment for any type of writer, any type of actor, and any kind of production being done right now. So if you have Netflix, expect a lot of Korean fare, and a lot of that apparently that popped up this weekend is all about zombies. There's a whole lot of zombie stuff out of Korea because zombies are hot. So get prepared for a whole lot of zombie stuff out of Korea. At number 12, At least 36 dead in wildfire in historic Lahaina, Hawaii, officials say. Now, this is the headline we initially launched this off with when we started bringing up the fires in Hawaii. The island of Maui, the entire island is essentially affected by this, and it's a big deal. The number, as I'm recording this on Saturday morning, is 67, basically, people who are accounted for as dead. The caveat is they've not gone into many structures yet, as they've just gotten the fire basically contained. So they have to see if anyone has basically died inside of structures. That will change the numbers significantly, they believe. We know that the issue was essentially a perfect storm, no pun intended, of conditions made by the hurricane that did not hit Hawaii, but made a pressure system that made it ripe for wildfires in the brush where they're having a drought, and hard to fight it in that pressure system and being so isolated from any place. And it's not like there was rain coming down. If the hurricane was coming over, then there'd be rain to put it out. That's not what happened. It is extremely terrible. I've seen the pictures of it, and it's heartbreaking. If you follow my personal story, you know that my family and my city went through a pretty severe tornado in the middle of the town area that we're still dealing with. I'm in temporary housing because my house is still being rebuilt. It's that bad. So things like this, including a story I saw this morning about a guy who had to get his house rebuilt from a fire from a previous wildfire 4 years ago that's been burnt down again. He's lost 2 houses to fires in 4 years. And he says, I guess we're going to have to rebuild it again. This is a tragic story. There are various ways to connect and donate for this one. Look for one that you trust. And if it's in your heart to give to this cause, please give to this cause. At number 13, Jake Paul wins the unanimous decision against Nate Diaz in boxing bout. The short version of this right now is Jake Paul, like I say, may look like a big doofus and may, got famous by doing pranks that teenage girls kind of giggled at, but he's apparently a pretty good boxer. And the state of boxing as it is, they need someone to watch, and Jake Paul is the guy they're watching. He did beat up on Nate Diaz, who essentially is an old washed-up MMA guy, for lack of a better term, switching out of the MMA, the fighting, cage fighting, to a traditional boxing style, trying to use some fame and fortune to bring some money to the fight. In the 10-round event, Diaz essentially had no chance, essentially almost knocked out pretty much a couple of rounds, and Jake Paul gets that unanimous win last weekend. Let's go to number 14. Ringleader Bethany Frankel recruits over 80 people in Bravo NBC war. A few weeks ago, we talked about Bethany Frankel when all these folks were basically, well, not basically, they are striking. The actors are striking, the writers are striking. She said, why don't reality stars strike? Because they don't get paid the way the other people do. They don't get residuals. They don't get the big money in perpetuity like the other folks do, which is sort of the point of why reality shows take over when there are issues with stuff like that. But she essentially was pushing the fact that Bravo's show, the Housewives shows, essentially is all sort of fake, which we already know. Basically getting people drunk and depriving them of sleep and food, so they're anxious and they're all antsy. And so they're pretty much ready to flip tables at any point in time. They're basically finding housewife types, not so much housewives, and setting them up to fail and be cranky and be on a fight so they can tape it. Essentially like Girls Gone Wild with older women. So about 80 people in Reality Game got together with this one. We're going to see how this one plays out, as Bethany Frankel, I believe, is playing for relevancy, because no one literally is talking about Bethany Frankel. And the number 15 story this week, not in range. Orioles announcer Kevin Brown reportedly suspended for broadcasting truth about team's former losing ways. Broadcaster for the Baltimore Orioles, Kevin Brown, was Kevin Brown, as he talked about the team on air just being bad in the past. They were 0-15-1 in the previous 16 series against the Rays, and had 3 of the first games basically just get blown out. And because he essentially did not read the Homer handbook and said, oh, everything is great, he got suspended from broadcasting. Not quite fired, but just pulled off the air for not being the cheery Homer guy that they usually hear on the radio. Guess what? More people are applauding him for saying, you know what? The Orioles are bad. The people can see it. The players know it. The owners kind of see it. Why can't the guy say they were bad, maybe it'll get better? When he comes back, we'll see if he's allowed to say that they were bad and maybe they'll get better. Or maybe not. And finally, number 214, this story, as we said, least engaging story of the week, least engaging of the top story by 670,000%. This headline reads, research firm says Proud Boys legal team stiffed them $3,000. So a research firm did some work for the Proud Boys. And the attorney that represented them said they did not pay the $30,000 for a report they were doing to prepare for what turned into the January 6th insurrection riots, big old fight at D.C. Oddly enough, the Proud Boys use actual data, actual research. They are pretty well funded and pretty well organized organization. They're not just a bunch of hillbillies that are just sort of running out there with guns saying, hey, let's do this thing right there. All the things they do are well planned out, well thought, well organized. And because of this, a legal firm is saying they did some research for them to get things ready and they want to get paid. Now, the fact that you may not have thought they do research is one thing. And the fact that they don't pay their bills is another thing. The fact that the Proud Boys are still existing and doing what they're doing is something totally else. Nothing surprises me when I see the stories that don't get responses, except for the fact that a lot of times it's based on the way things put out. Maybe this was put out at 3 a.m. and nobody paid attention to it because of where it was. No one got a chance to see it. Maybe it was a weekend story that got stuffed in there that really got missed with other bigger things. We go through so many stories in the weekend. But this is a story that probably should have got more attention. Someone should have paid attention to it, which means we probably shouldn't be talking about it at all, because it should be a mid-level story in the 25s to 100s as opposed to 214 for the week. I suggest you take a look at this in the links we have for all the stories. We have all the stories in our descriptions, in our show notes, wherever you got this from. Check it out and you go deeper into any of the stories. This is one you might want us to be a bit extra curious about. I'm just saying. And with that, hopefully your curiosity has been quenched for the week on the stories that you guys said were tops. My name is Jay Cleveland Payne, and this has been the weekly wrap-up for the week ending August the 12th, 2023. We thank you so much for being with us for the show, being with us all week long as a part of the feeds to tell us what to do in the shows, and the response and the feedback we have been gotten. Very quickly, we're always doing some tweaking. We did some very significant tweaking to some things in the daily show, and we've gotten great feedback for what it's done. So check it out. If you've not seen that, go to our website. This is theconversationproject.com. We have the replays and the archives of all of our daily shows, of this show, of the weekly wrap-ups, and links to find us everywhere else. We're on TikTok, we're on Twitter, we're on X, which is still Twitter. We're YouTube, Facebook. Anywhere you want us to be, we're kind of there. Follow us on your podcast machine. Wherever your favorite podcasts are found, we have a podcast for the weekly wrap-up, for the story of the week, and for things you might have heard. So it's audio versions of basically what I put here. We have newsletters for this, the weekly wrap-up, and for things you might have heard. So check those things out as well. Subscribe so go into your inbox, straight to the links to your inbox. And just be with us for these things. I say at the end of every single one of my productions, stay limber, stay hydrated, and stay on task. I say that because I, as a person who tend to do bad things to maybe short my life in unnecessarily, know that it's not the right thing to do and suggest you do the same. So do what you can to make sure you are safe, sound, and secure, because I need the listeners, I need the viewers, I need the clicks. And in all seriousness, other people need you around for the love, support, and what you provide to the community. So the community needs you. I need you. We need you. Please be here for all of us. With that, we're going to wrap this thing up for this week. I am Jay Cleveland Payne. Thank you so much for being a part of the Conversation Projects family. Email us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com for more sort of back and forth, and sign out what next week you guys told me were the stories were top 10s. From 10 to 1, we'll let you know what stories starting from yesterday going to the end of next week are the top stories per your engagement, what stories you say were tops. We'll see what happens next week.